Hello, friends, and welcome to Mousterpiece Melodies, a podcast that's listening to the songs of Disney movies past and present. I'm Josh Spiegel.
And I'm Scott Renshaw. Thanks for joining us on this comprehensive and encyclopedic compendium of all things Disney music. Now playing from 1977, Pete's Dragon.
Before we get into our discussion, thank you for listening. No matter how you're checking us out, we hope you like what you're hearing. And if you are, we'd appreciate it if you could rate and review Mousterpiece Melodies on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever app you're using to listen.
That's right. Let everyone know how much you love the show and tell your friends to do the same. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Scott Renshaw, and you can read my film criticism at cityweekly.net.
And you can follow me on Blue Sky at Mousterpiece and email me at mousterpiececinema@gmail.com with any comments, questions, or opinions you'd like to share. Now that the housekeeping is out of the way, let's start talking about the songs of Pete's Dragon. And to do that, we are thrilled to bring into the show a very special and our very first guest. He is a film critic for New York Magazine and Vulture. Bilge Ebiri, welcome to Mousterpiece Melodies, and thank you so much for being here.
Very happy to be here. I did not realize that was your first guest.
You are the bar. You are setting the bar for future guests, and we're thrilled to have you here for the songs of Pete's Dragon. This is the 1977 film directed by Don Chaffee, starring Sean Marshall, Helen Reddy, Mickey Rooney, Jim Dale, Red Buttons, Shelley Winters, and more. Now, the film as a whole, I want to just very quickly get a glimpse for all three of us in terms of our initial introduction to this film. I mentioned in our first episode a couple weeks ago that this overall podcast is inspired by me having re-listened to old episodes of my favorite comedy podcast, You Talking U2 to Me, where Scott Aukerman and Adam Scott talk about the band U2, and they answer critical questions like, what are the names of the members of the band U2? And when the guests are on, when did you first hear of the band U2? Now, I'm not going to ask that second question exactly for Pete's Dragon, but kind of, sort of, since I think I can say this safely. If I'm putting my foot in my mouth, so be it. I believe both of you were alive when Pete's Dragon was released in 1977, whereas I was not. So, Bilge first, then Scott.
Wow.
Did you see? Wow. I know. I'm a young man. I'm a young man, Bilge. I'm only 40 years old. No, what I was going to say, though, I mean, is this a film? I know that both of you were in very different parts of the world when you were kids. Did you see Pete's Dragon in theaters? Is this a film that you gravitated towards as a kid?
I did not see it in theaters.
Okay.
This movie's 1977, right?
That's right.
I would have been in Turkey, and Disney movies did not come there that quickly. So I did not see it at the time. I did not know about it at the time. I saw it. I did see it as a kid when I saw it on video sometime in the early 80s. I probably would have been like 8 or 9. And my first exposure to Pete's Dragon was Disney, remember magazines? Disney magazines. And I can't remember if the magazine was called like Mickey or something like that, but there was a magazine, a Disney magazine. There were probably multiple ones, and I had one, and it had pictures from Pete's Dragon, and it had stickers, and it was like a sticker of Elliot the dragon that you would like insert into like frames, stick him into frames so that suddenly Elliot was there. And it was, I only have kind of a vague memory of this, but I do remember sort of, sticking this little sticker of Elliot around, not really knowing what Pete's Dragon was. At that point, I might not have even known what a dragon was. Because remember, I was also like, I came to the U.S. in 1980, didn't speak English. By the time I saw Pete's Dragon, I was fluent. But the thing I do remember is we rented Pete's Dragon, and I loved it so much that we kept that videotape for something like 35 days. Or I kept the videotape for 35 days and didn't tell my parents. And I remember, I would watch it every day. And I remember at one point my dad was like, "What is this videotape doing here? Have we not returned this? Are you kidding me?" 'Cause, late fees. Like obviously not everyone remembers late fees, but like it was just we'd racked up enough late fees that we probably should have just bought the tape. But yeah, I remember sort of that being I guess one of many lifelong embarrassments regarding Pete's Dragon for me. I guess since the film doesn't have a great reputation, I've since found out. But yeah, no, I loved it. Watched it a million times. In fact, over the years, at some point, I did watch it again. I don't remember when, but it was a while ago. Watching it again for this, it just reminded me how just what a visceral reaction I have to the songs and the performances, and because they're so ingrained somewhere deep within the core of my being. I was like, I feel like I know every single beat of this song. I don't know the song really well or anything like that, but there's just something about all the performances and all of, and just all the lyrics and the beats of the songs that are just it just sort of gets me, somewhere deep inside. It's very strange.
Understandable. Scott, how about you? Was this a film that you saw in theaters as a little boy who wanted to be a big boy?
So I feel like this is going to turn into one of those combinations of Mandela effect and Doug's first movie effect. Those of you who are not familiar with the old show, as we said, there was an incident involving Doug's first movie where I claimed to have no previous experience, and then Josh proceeded to read my review of the film. And so there's this thing that goes on where it's last week when we were talking about Snow White and my experience with Disney movies, I mentioned that the Disney Robin Hood was my first theatrical movie. And so I would have been 10 years old when this came out. And I'm like, okay, I know I didn't watch it for our for the original, because I was not your co-host when you did the 1977 version. Mm-hmm. I didn't re-watch it before the 2016 remake. I know that. And I'm thinking, when did I see this? And I have these sort of vague little bits and pieces. I don't think 1977, I was already Star Wars and, The Spy Who Loved Me. That was, what I was into. I was kind of Disney's a little bit uncool at this point to me. So I don't think I saw it in theaters, but I am not sure. And I honestly, I'm trying to remember, when would it have been one of the, the VHS, or what? Maybe it was when it was on, Wonderful World of Disney, at some point in the 1980s. But I watched this going, I have so little memory of anything besides Candle on the Water. And I was trying to think, where and when did I have more of a memory of the Elliott float from the Main Street Electrical Parade than I have anything from this movie.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and again, for my part, as I said, I sadly was not alive in 1977 when this came out. I was realizing this morning, it's not just that I wasn't even a thought in my parents' mind in 1977. They had not even met each other in 1977. So I was so far removed from when this film was released, obviously. I know that I saw it either on VHS or on the Disney Channel when I was a kid. Similar to Remember magazines, I would tell people listening, remember when the Disney Channel was a premium add-on to cable packages? Because it was when I was a kid. That was the one luxury channel that my parents were willing to get on TV. We didn't have HBO or Showtime. We had the Disney Channel. So I know that I watched this movie a few times growing up, because I'm sure the appeal was, it's a dragon. There's a kid. The dragon is animated. There's songs. It was in the vein of Mary Poppins or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, this big, splashy musical film. One thing that I do want to call out here before we dig in song by song, there are 10 original songs in this movie. Candle on the Water is the one that I think inarguably has endured well past when the film was released. But there are a lot of songs in this movie. And again, rewatching it here, I was reminded there's a little bit of that kind of emotional connection similar to Mary Poppins or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, where there's this maternal figure who is making a connection with at least one child in this film versus the couple or three. I forget if there's 3 kids in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, but there's a couple kids in both of those films. But yeah, I mean, I had watched it as a kid a few times. I'd liked it then. And as Scott noted, it's not just that Scott wasn't my co-host when I talked about Pete's Dragon on the old show. It's that I did that as one of the first 10 or 15 titles, which was back when I didn't even have a host.
Episode 20. It was episode 20. I just went to go check.
There you go. I was a little off, but there. Episode 20. Way, way back then. And what I remember from that recording back in 2011, were we ever so young, was I was profoundly annoyed by Pete's Dragon. It was so heavy on slapstick, on playing to the back row, which, again, we're not going to talk about the overall film here, but I do think that some of those qualities rear their heads in a couple of the songs. I think at least one of these songs is amazing. I won't spoil it, but it's the obvious title. I think that there is a really interesting array of quality, though, across the other 9 songs here. And I do want to very broadly note, so the songs here were not written by somebody like the Sherman Brothers, who, of course, did Mary Poppins. These songs were written by Al Kasha and Joel Hirshhorn, who had a pretty notable pedigree by the time of Pete's Dragon. They had won 2 separate Oscars for Best Original Song. They won for the songs I believe at the end of both The Poseidon Adventure and The Towering Inferno. Both.
That is correct.
Irwin Allen disaster movies. And it is funny. I didn't realize it, I don't think, until watching it this time. This movie is a weird little Poseidon Adventure reunion. You not only have Kasha and Hirshhorn, Red Buttons and Shelley Winters are in this film as well. Yeah, so it's funny. I haven't seen Poseidon Adventure in a long time. I saw it when I was a kid. I remember liking that one. I don't know if it would hold up quite the same way as when it did when I was a kid, but I only mentioned it because I wonder if if specifically Red Buttons and Shelley Winters are going quite as big in that movie, which is about a boat flipped upside down, as they are going as big in this movie, because the two of them they are going for it. They are swinging for the fences. But I'll save my comments for Red Buttons later. I do want to kind of go song by song, track by track. As I said, there's 10 songs. And I want to talk about them in the order in which they appear in the film, although I will note that if you, like me, go to Apple Music and listen to the album of this film's songs, I don't know if either of you noticed this, the songs are wildly out of order in the album. Candle on Water is first, which represents the fact that it's, I think, the most well-known song. But the other 9 are not ordered in the way they appear in the film. It's just kind of it's like somebody threw 10 numbers in the air and just kind of reordered things at random. It's very weird. The opening song.
It's almost as those songs in the 21st century are, shall we say, shuffled frequently.
You might say that. True. So the opening song, as I said, the movie, the basic setup of the film, which is worth calling out since it's worth identifying how these songs fit in the context of that setup. It's set at the turn of the 20th century in Maine. There is a boy named Pete living in the forest. Pete is played here by Sean Marshall. He is under the thumb of his cartoonishly awful foster family, the Gogans. Shelley Winters, Charles Tyner, Gary Morgan, and a very young pre-Taxi, pre-Grease, Jeff Conaway. They are, I don't know if it would be derogatory and incorrect to call them rednecks because it's not set in the South, but they are cartoon versions of like Cletus the Slackjaw Yokel from The Simpsons, essentially. And he also has only one friend. Inexplicably, it is a very large, very animated dragon named Elliot, voiced, I guess we'd say voiced because he does make sound effects for him, the comedian Charlie Callis. And when the film begins, we meet the Gogans as they sing a song that feels like it's an Americanized Dickens type of thing. The Happiest Home in These Hills. The title aside, it is meant to be a very sarcastic title because the Gogans are describing the various ways in which they want to keep Pete under their thumb before he is able to escape to the small town of Passamaquoddy. This is the opening song of this film, The Happiest Home in These Hills. As I said, 10 songs in this movie. We've mentioned Candle on the Water a couple of times, and I think we can all at least agree The Happiest Home in These Hills is drastically, wildly different in tone, in style, in quality from Candle on the Water. It is very big, very outrageous. I did not find it particularly tuneful or catchy. There are a couple of songs here that I don't love, but that are undeniably earworms in a way. What did the two of you make of The Happiest Home in These Hills as our opening number to the world of Pete's Dragon?
I'll defer to Bilge first to get going. He's the fan.
I'm a fan. I mean, I am not a good. I'm not a. Well, this is the part where I reveal why it was maybe not the best idea to have me as your first. I am not a good music talker person. Like I always, whenever I try to describe it, and I love music, I love talking, I love listening to things, but whenever I try to describe music, I'm like, I don't even know if I'm using the right words. But I will say one of the things that I enjoy about the songs in Pete's Dragon, and I think this is true of a lot of Disney, like kind of classic Disney musicals, and also true of my favorite kind of animated classic Disney film, Peter Pan. I like how the songs are kind of integrated into the narrative, so that a lot of the songs, if you listen to them separately, and I never had like the album for Pete's Dragon, though at some point I imagine I must have, listened to these songs separate from the movie, but they're not really songs you would sit back and enjoy just listening to. Like they work within the context of the movie, so that sometimes I don't even think of them as songs almost, And this is one of those where it's like, I mean, this is kind of our introduction to these people, and it kind of sets the tone for the film, and also how music will be used in the film. They're hillbillies. I mean, I'm assuming there's like some Beverly Hillbillies stuff in here as well. I never watched that TV show, but I know it existed. And it's funny because, I mean, you asked earlier, is Shelley Winters, hamming it up even more in this one than she is in, the disaster movies that she was in famously. She was always kind of a ham, but here I like the hamminess of the performances in this one. I like the energy of it. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, did they ever do like a Pete's Dragon like stage musical? Because I feel like it would kind of kill on the stage because of the kind of energy that's required for these songs,
They did not,
I agree.
To answer your question.
I completely agree, because this is true of all of the significant supporting roles. I mean, it is certainly true of Jim Dale. It is certainly true of Andy Rooney. But I think mostly in a good way.
You mean
Mostly
Mickey Rooney?
I would love to see
grief.
Andy Rooney's version of this character.
Yeah,
Good grief.
that would be great.
But mostly in a good. I think the choices they were making were big, silly kid movie choices, and mostly worked. The thing I liked the Happiest Home in These Hills conceptually more than I actually like the song, because I like the idea of this. There's they're basically trying to lure him back, and here we're so wonderful, or you're imagining this is probably the front that they had to put on in order to get him in the first place, although they later produced the bill of sales to show they just flat out bought him, so maybe they didn't have to pretend to be an actual good home. But the swing back and forth between, we just love you, Petey, and we want you back, and then the verses about, what they're going to do to him when they get him back. Again, I like it conceptually. And I like the idea that it was suggesting to me this is going to be a big, broad song. I guess I didn't find it actually as funny or as, clever as the idea behind it was.
Yeah, I think I'm a little closer to Scott there in that I think conceptually it makes sense. And like I said, I don't know that I had in previous viewings thought to myself that these characters feel very much like out of an Americanized version of Oliver Twist or David Copperfield, of these like outlandishly like dirtied, mussed up, hillbilly types who are, among other things, I wasn't supposed to be thinking to myself during the soon to come bill of sale song, who would let these people buy any child, leaving aside the fact that how is that even possible? Like, why would you ever let those people do it? Because they look like they should be wearing a sign that says, "We're evil, we're bad people." Like, and I know that's naive of me to wonder, how could anybody allow other people to do bad things in the world? That's crazy. But my point is I get it conceptually. I think one thing that I did remember from my 2011 viewing that I think kind of carries over in certain song sequences here, including this one. If you listen just to the album, some of the songs seem, to me, surprisingly short, and that's because they cut out some of the longer dance moments or the little bits of slapstick in this song, for example, where the overall sequence might be like 5 minutes, but the song by itself is only about 2.5 to 3 minutes. And the length of it, I think, contributes to my reaction of not just the performers feeling like they're hamming it up, but that everything feels bigger and broader in a way. People who listen to the old show, and Scott knows this as well, I love the Pete's Dragon remake by David Lowery, which we will very briefly talk about at the end of this discussion because it has a cover of Candle on the Water. But one of the reasons why I like that movie so much is it is everything this movie is not. So I think there are pieces of the music that I really do enjoy. We'll get to those soon. But I do think generally it is a mixed bag. And speaking of mixed bag, I want to move to the second song, because after this initial song where Pete and Elliot are able to evade the clutches of the Gogans, largely because Elliot is able to make himself invisible and knock the 4 hillbillies flat, they leave the forest. There's a sign, I think it's like 3 miles to Passamaquoddy. So on the way to Passamaquoddy, they sing a song called, and I want to make sure I get the title fully correct, Boo Bop 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 Bop, 4 bops, parentheses, I Love You Too. This is a song that Pete largely sings to Elliot with some sound effects help from Elliot, where they're basically talking about how special their relationship is and how close they are to each other. And I want to be very clear. I don't have an issue with Sean Marshall, the performer. This is a kid. He is doing his very best. I think the 2 words I put in my notes to start this one were cloying bullshit. This song specifically and by the way, when I talk about earworms, I had the tune to this song in my head for a day after watching the movie. So it is catchy. I want to be very clear. I'm not going to deny that the tune of it does stick in your head. But I just found it to be so sappy. And again, maybe if it was shorter, maybe if it felt like it took a little less time. I think one of the other things that struck me here when I think about a film like this compared to Mary Poppins or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, each of which have lots of songs as well, this is setting the tone for this is a big musical. We are not going to shy away from lots of songs. You have 2 songs in the first 10 minutes, and I would say neither of them give you a sense of what the other songs are going to sound like or feel like, personally. But more importantly, it's like, you are not starting with your strongest stuff. That's me. I'm a grouch. Bilge, you are the biggest fan of the 3 of us here. What do you make of Boo Bop 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 Bop?
Ironically enough, this is the one that's less of an earworm for me than any of the others. It's, again, I mean, you mentioned the fact that these songs, as songs, are shorter than the sequences they take place in, and that's one of the things I like about because of the way it's kind of integrated and runs through, and there's this sense of like people are talking and then they're singing and then they're talking and then and then there's like this song. I mean, I can take or leave this one. The cloying element is interesting because I was looking into some of the reviews that of Pete's Dragon from the time, and a lot of them actually suggested that it was that the film was less cloying than other sort of Disney movies. And in fact, I can't, this review is quoted in like the Wikipedia page or something like that. But somebody, I can't remember who it was, actually noted that Sean Marshall seemed to be a lot less cloying and quote unquote adorable than sort of the Disney Muppets of other films. He does seem, it's funny because you watch him today and he seems a little out of his element. But it does come off as sort of just like a person just being themselves on screen, which is interesting given that they're, acting opposite, an imaginary animated dragon. But so this song doesn't do much for me as well. But it is narratively important because it's establishing this friendship between Pete and Elliot.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because for me, sitting here again with very little memory of the movie itself, I was sitting here listening to it. Well, there are 2 things that are not at all related, but one of them is that this is a really weirdly structured screenplay because in no other conception of this material would you imagine he already knows the dragon. It would be, the setup would be, he's in this terrible situation, but here comes the dragon to be his friend and to help him save the day. Now it makes sense in a certain way to have him to not wait too long to get to the dragon. The kids are going to be like, "Where's the dragon?" It's the when are we going to get to the fireworks factory of this movie? So I get it from that point, but it is still weird that Pete is already friends with Elliot before the movie begins. So there's that, but it's also as an elder Xer who grew up at a time when the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family were. This is what this song is like. This is a Brady Bunch Partridge Family. It brought back memories of these sort of insipid little. We're just sitting here, not really playing our instruments, watching this, and yeah, it was hard. It was hard to stomach, but again, mostly I was thinking like, man, they really love each other so much, and we're just meeting them.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting screenplay choices in this one, I think. But yeah, and of course, what you're describing in terms of Pete finding himself in that situation and then meeting Elliot is, of course, part of how the remake handles their story, although very briefly at the start. Yeah, I mean, the Partridge Family Brady Bunch comparison is a very good one, especially considering the era in which this film arrived. Now, once Pete and Elliot make their way into Passamaquoddy, of course, Elliot is invisible, so things seem to follow in Pete's wake without anybody understanding why, and Pete becomes instantly like persona non grata in town. And as they're trying to make their way through, they pass by this tavern, and they also pass by the very drunk Lampy, who is the lighthouse keeper played by, I wish Andy Rooney, but sadly just Mickey Rooney. By the way, we've done Remember this twice. Remember Andy Rooney, kids? Google him if you don't know who we're talking about.
Mickey Rooney, though. You ever wonder what it's like to be in a dragon costume?
That's pretty good Andy Rooney impression. But we mean Mickey Rooney, who was once the biggest star in the world, as he once said, or as Dana Carvey once said about him. But point being, Mickey Rooney plays Lampy, who is this very drunk lighthouse keeper who is able to see Elliot, and he goes into the tavern. He tells people that he saw a dragon, and that leads, of course, to the song, I Saw a Dragon, which is the first big showstopper kind of number. There is a very lengthy dance. It feels lengthy. It's not really. The entire song sequence is about 4.5 minutes long, but I will note, if you listen just to the track in the album, it's about 2.5 minutes. There's a good 90 or so seconds of dancing here. This is also a song that functions as our introduction to Nora, who is Lampy's daughter, played by Helen Reddy. She is obviously, she's not quite as fond of the drink as Lampy seems to be. And among other things, this time around I was watching it and I was thinking, so this is basically what would have happened in Beauty and the Beast if Maurice was drunk when he went into the tavern to tell everybody that he saw a beast. That's really what it reminded me of this time. That plus the fact that the dancing aspect of this song, there's meant to be this big, it's almost equivalent to, if anybody out there has seen the film version of Fiddler on the Roof, it's also the stage version, the dance sequence with the guys with their bottles on the top of their heads. Here you have dancers, including Helen Reddy, doing a dance on barrels of beer that are not only moving with them stepping on top of the barrels, but also near the end, the barrels are spewing out beer, which is a really weird image in a family film. And I remembered that very well from my discussion in episode 20 of the old show, because I was like, am I supposed to think it looks like the barrels are peeing or ejaculating? That's what it looked like to me. It's real weird. And the song itself is... I mean, it's very much, it's talking about people going big, being hammy. Mickey Rooney, obviously very hammy. I know that this was kind of in a brief, like, second wind of popularity he had. I want to say that this movie was released a couple of years before The Black Stallion, in which he co-starred, and I believe he got an Academy Award nomination for that.
Yeah.
Film. I assume because he's not going quite as big as he is here. But I Saw a Dragon as a song is a little catchy, but the thing that I did not particularly love how this song pauses to have the dancing, partly because it feels like the film is essentially stopping the story at a moment where it could be relatively interesting. And we're about to get a song that will allow Nora and Pete to meet each other and begin to bond. But first, we have to have the dancing. I will call out before I throw it over to Bilge. I remembered, I don't know why, but I remembered that this film's choreographer, Anna White, also is the choreographer of one of my favorite movie musicals, The Music Man, which, as much as I love it, does have a number of extended dance sequences that I'm sure were initially there to allow audiences around the country to experience what audiences saw on stage in the Broadway version of The Music Man. But in a film, I think it obviously depends on the movie, on the choreographer, on the dancers. Sometimes those types of protracted dance sequences can be wonderful. You know, I mentioned in my notes, there's a Gene Kelly-esque attempt with the barrel dancing of like, look at how cool this is. Don Chaffee is trying to make it very clear that these people are really dancing on these barrels. It's not meant to be trickery of some kind. But there's something about it that falls a little flat for me. I think it's impressive that they try to do it that way, that kind of dancing, but it feels a little bit like we must make this movie a little bit longer. We must add dancing here. But Bilge, what did you think of I Saw a Dragon?
I mean, I love the sequence. I love the dancing. Sorry. I love kind of that weird little moment where she's like starts to roll on, starts to kind of not dance quite, but kind of walk on the barrels, and then it turns into a dance, and there's this weird tension of, is she going to fall? Is she going to do it? I don't know. I really enjoyed the sequence. I love the energy of it. I love the fact that it's imperfect. Again, it doesn't feel like, you never get the sense in this film that these people are great dancers. I mean, you get that maybe a little bit with Helen Reddy's characters, but it's not, you never get the sense that, oh, these people, like, they really know what they're doing. It's more like, I like that sort of awkward energy to dancing. It's, a lot of musicals I've liked over the years that other people were kind of picked nits with, like Cyrano, for example, is one of those films where I'm like, I like the fact that it's kind of rough around the edges and the musical sequences are in and out and you're not quite sure if these people are supposed to be great dancers. Like, not having grown up with like kind of the sort of really classic, hey, look, it's Gene Kelly, it's Fred Astaire, those kinds of musicals. To me, this stuff feels a lot more natural in many ways. So I really enjoy the sequence, and the song I think has great energy. This I think was maybe the first time I saw Mickey Rooney in a movie. As a kid, I was a big fan of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but I think I probably saw that a little later. It's entirely possible I saw him here and was like, oh, hey, who's this Mickey Rooney guy? But yeah, man, I enjoy the sequence quite a bit. And watching it again, I was reminded of how much I enjoyed it as a kid. I mean, this is the thing. The movie is made for kids, right? It's made for little kids. And it's made in an era before, all the 4-quadrant bullshit that you live through, where it's like, it's made for kids. It's not made for 50-year-olds. And it's not made for 50-year-olds watching it, 50 years later and picking holes in it. It's like, as a 9-year-old, I thought this was like the best fucking thing in the world. And when I watch it now, I remember feeling that way. So that energy carries across. If I saw it now without that, without that kind of memory, I might be like, oh no, this is bad. This is not good. I denounce this, but like, I don't know. It's a movie made in 1977 for little kids, and it's delightful.
Yeah. I mean, I love things feeling of its time. There's a lot about certainly the direction overall of this that feels like, oh, there was a template. As much as people talk about the templates for Marvel movies, there was a template for how you directed a Disney live action movie in the late 60s through really probably this movie. I mean, this may have been sort of the end of that particular era, but I mean, I'm actually much more on Bilge's side for this one. I think this is the song that made it feel like a musical to me. Like made it feel. I mean, I'm a musical theater fan, and this is one of the things where it's like, as soon as we hit that da 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 da, I'm like, all right, I'm bouncing to that thing. It's just and it had it understood, and as we get to talking about some of the other ones and kind of the context in which they appear, there are songs that are that to me are otherwise so flat because of the way in which they're performed. This had that, yes, all right, now we're going for it. And it perhaps made me even more receptive to the later ones, which we've already hinted at that you may think were way too big, but it's like, I need this after the lull. I like the choreography. I like the idea that we can actually see the choreography happening, which we don't see too much in contemporary movies.
True.
And I am still, as I noted shortly after I watched it on the Blue Sky, it's like, this is probably hitting the swan song of the time when alcoholism could be used as comedy for children's films. I mean, honestly, I was trying to think of an example post 1977 where this was kind of I grew up with, Looney Tunes cartoons where, you had drunkenness as a punchline all the time. So it's not like this was some unique quality, but there was some point very shortly after this where it's like, maybe not so much the liquored up sot who's wandering around as the comic relief.
Yes. And it's funny. Mickey Rooney's style of hamminess, I think because the character is so frequently established as being drunk, and leave aside the appropriateness of it in a kid's film, I think that it's like, yeah, I can understand why he's going big, although he is definitely going very big. And we'll get to the other, there's a couple other songs here that I am going to be a very big grouch on, but not the next one, because after the tavern scene, after Nora hears her dad talking about there was a kid and a dragon, and of course she assumes he is hallucinating all of it, she does realize that there is a little boy named Pete in the cave near the lighthouse. She goes to meet him. She does not see Elliot at this point. She actually only sees Elliot pretty much at the very end of the film in the climax. But she sees this little boy. She invites him into the house, and she gives him a hot meal, lets him sleep in a bed in the house. And while she's getting him ready for bed, she sings with him It's Not Easy, a song that I am happy to report I like this song. This is a good song. I think it is charming. The lyrics are definitely a little on the cloying side, but I think that, Helen Reddy has a really wonderful singing voice. I think that her energy is certainly much more applicable to singing than to acting. She's a fine actress, but clearly it makes sense why she was such a well-known singer in the 70s and 80s. I like this song a lot. I think the score the music of the song does a lot more for me than just the lyrics, but I think it's the kind of cloying-esque song that Disney has done very well. There's songs like that in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, in Mary Poppins, that I like, almost in spite of being a little on the sentimental side. But I do very much enjoy It's Not Easy, in spite of the fact, or perhaps because of the fact, that it's not a big kind of a number. It's a quieter song. It's just the two of them singing this together. It's not meant to be, overly emotional, but clearly it means a lot to Pete that he's able to actually be in a house with a person who does not seem to want to abuse him, horribly, cartoonishly evil person like that. Like it's clearly a good human moment for him. I like this song. This is the first of a couple that I will admit I enjoy. I can acknowledge that. But again, it's a big drastic shift tonally from I Saw a Dragon. What do the two of you make of It's Not Easy?
I'll dive in first for this. This for me is a much better song to listen to than it is to watch in the context of the movie. It's a slow moment that actually to me doesn't quite hit the connection that we're trying to get, because basically Pete is completely passive in this case. He's not really sort of engaging. She seems to be the one where all the emotion is, and it would have been nicer to have it so. But listening to it in isolation, it is quite lovely. It's a very pretty song. I'm like watching the sequence itself. It's going like, give me a little more of that. It's like we just come out of the I Saw a Dragon. Give me some of that energy back.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of a contrast with the vibrancy and kind of the craziness of that scene. I do like. I mean, the sequence itself doesn't do anything for me here, but I do like the song, and I'm a sucker for like the sentimental Disney songs of yore. Obviously, Candle on the Water is kind of the one here, but those are the songs I kind of miss in current Disney. Not just because, I mean, not that they don't have them. I mean, there's plenty of sentiment in in later Disney, but I do miss the kind of quiet, the Your Mother and Mine type songs, that do have a kind of old school musical feel. I mean, Vincente Minnelli's films have those too, I always, that's a kind of sentimental elegance that I miss in a lot of contemporary musicals, both Disney and elsewhere. But this song it's fine. It's not, in terms of the types of songs that are in this movie, it's obviously completely upstaged by Candle on the Water, which is phenomenal.
Yes, we'll get there soon. And I will say, it's funny. I think Your Mother and Mine is a good deep cut from Peter Pan. I think the other one I was like, that this reminds me of a little bit is Stay Awake from Mary Poppins, just in terms of that. Like, it's not quite a lullaby, but you kind of get that sense of it's a song that's meant to be kind of a come down from the previous one, both for the character and for the audience. But before we get to Candle on the Water, we must, unfortunately, arrive at one of two songs featuring two characters who I will not beat around the bush. I absolutely cannot stand the two songs performed by Dr. Terminus, who is a con artist, snake oil salesman, and his assistant Hoagie. They escape the clutches of a town a few miles away from Passamaquoddy. They arrive back there, but of course the people of Passamaquoddy remember them and their various horrible fake medications that they have been sold. Having said that, Dr. Terminus, who is played by Jim Dale, Hoagie, played by the aforementioned Red Buttons, are able to win over the gullible townspeople, a.k.a. the morons, who live in Passamaquoddy. Not that that is unbelievable in and of itself, but they sing a song titled after the town in which, A, they attempt to identify different medications that they can sell to people of the town, and B, Dr. Terminus reveals his hilarious inability to say Passamaquoddy. It's just so funny. And I need to be very clear about something. So Jim Dale, who people may know as the narrator of the U.S. versions of the Harry Potter audiobooks, as well as the narrator of Pushing Daisies, the late lamented ABC show, which I will be bringing up a little bit later on here. He and Red Buttons, both longtime performers. I think a couple years after this, Jim Dale was in a Broadway version of a musical about P.T. Barnum. I want to say that he either got nominated for the Tony or he won the Tony for that film. I mean, Jim Dale is a longtime performer. He actually won the Tony for Barnum. But point being, he's very talented. He's obviously very capable at delivering the big, broad performance here. And I just can't stand it. I appreciate what he's doing. I get why he's doing it. I think part of why I don't like either song that he and Red Buttons sing as Hoagie, they both follow the same structure, by which I mean they both have a single one-joke premise, in a way, and it is run down into the ground, below the ground, because if I recall correctly, in both songs' cases, and especially in this one, it essentially repeats itself for another 2.5 minutes. This is close to a 5-minute song, and it is, to me, it is just so endless. It's very big. It's very broad. I know that's what it's trying to do. It is nails on a chalkboard for me. I have a feeling it is not nails on a chalkboard for either of you. Please make me think I'm wrong. Please prove me. Please tell me one of you is willing to agree with me somewhat.
I'm not going to convince you you're wrong.
No, you're not.
But I will say, I love this song, and I'm assuming Every Little Piece is the other one you're talking about. I love both of those songs. I love both of those songs. I love how they're performed. I used to walk around as a kid singing these songs to myself. So if you had met in person, I realize you're a young man and you weren't even born yet. If we had somehow, you would have reached out of the womb and punched me in the face, probably. But I love this. I love how Jim Dale performs it. I'm not familiar with Jim Dale's other work. I didn't watch Pushing Daisy. I didn't listen to the Harry Potter book. I know he did a lot of other stuff. And I'm sure I saw him in a million things over the years. But to me, it's just like he's he's Dr. Terminus in Pete's Dragon, who is a character. This also was I'm pretty sure this was probably my first introduction to this, snarling, mustachioed, top-hatted charlatan villain type, which obviously is a total cliche.
Sure.
But I watch him in this movie, and I feel like I'm in like the fifth row of the theater, and like his spit is like landing on it.
Yes.
He is Jonathan Groff. He is Jonathan Groff in Hamilton. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, and I love that. Like, I love how, I mean, he just absolutely, he is locked in. I mean, he is all in on this performance. He's giving a performance like he's never going to be allowed to act again. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that some people would have wanted him to never act again after this, but like, it is very much I'm leaving it all on the court performance for me, and I love it. I love it, and I love all the ways of mispronouncing Passamaquoddy, which is, of course, now we can look at. I mean, it's like I'm pretty sure that's a Native American name. It is actually, there is an actual place called Passamaquoddy.
There is. Yep, there is.
But like, as a little kid, you probably can't pronounce that either. So I was like, what? And like, I totally bought into this concept of the song too, And I love the way how everybody, it's obviously totally phony and artificial in the way it's done in the movie, right? He's a charlatan. Everybody hates him. They all see through him. And he flatters them a little bit, and he does he has red buttons, comes on and pretends to be other people. And, he basically, through fraud, convinces them, once again, that he is their savior. A thing that never happens in real life. That would never happen.
A thing I despise in real life. I'm consistent. That's what I would say.
I was rejected by the citizenry for being an absolute villain and a felon, coming back and somehow being re-embraced because he said a couple of nice things and did a couple of fake things with his little helper guy. That would never happen.
Just because it is believable does not mean I have to like it.
Well, that's the funny thing. It's not believable. It's totally not believable. And yet, here we are.
Yes.
So I'm kind of squarely in the middle because I like, and when we get to every little piece, I will be much more even more so. I agree. I like the running the performance to the cheap seats, Jim Dale. I am totally fine with that. My problem with this song, as I just sat there going, it is just such a half-assed attempt at "You Got Trouble" from the music.
Yes.
It's just that, but not nearly as good. And so I mean, it is often hard for me to sit here. It's similar to what we were talking about with "Boo Bop 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 Bop." Is like all I can think of is I would have been listening to this in a Partridge Family episode. This was to me like I would rather be listening to "You Got Trouble." And
yes.
And so when you have those kinds of things, I mean, and that's fine that it's actually, I mean, that's what the Harold Hill is, this character. It's the same, the charlatan, the con artist, the person who's trying to, take the townspeople for a ride, but it's just not as interesting. But fortunately for me, Jim Dale is willing to sell it in a way that at least makes it interesting for me to watch, but I just didn't like the song.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I see Bilge's side of this here. And again, Jim Dale is going as big as possible. I think there's a part of me that wonders if watching this on a big screen would almost make it help more. Watching it at home, it's like, I'm not in the fifth row. I'm in my house. Lower your voice, Jim Dale. I get it. But I should also note, by the way, I mentioned Barnum before. It's not just that he won a Tony for Barnum in 1980. His co-star in that film, a pre-film Glenn Close. This is before The World According to Garth. This was not her first stage role, but arguably one of her bigger ones at the time. But anyway, so we will talk about Dr. Terminus and Hoagie again soon. Hoagie, after Passamaquoddy, goes to the local tavern, has a few drinks with Lampy, because why don't you want to have Red Buttons and Mickey Rooney on screen together? Lampy shows Hoagie Elliot, but Dr. Terminus assumes that both men are just crazy drunks. So that gets a pin put in it briefly. Afterwards, Lampy and Nora have a bit of an argument because Nora's backstory is that her fiancé, Paul, is a sailor who got stranded. She believes he is still out there somewhere. Lampy believes that her fiancé has passed. This leads to Nora going to the top of the lighthouse and singing Candle on the Water, a song we have talked about a few times here already. Now, the one thing that I want to mention, first of all, this is a great song. I love Candle on the Water. There is nothing bad to say about this song. It's excellent. And one thing that I was specifically thinking about in watching the film a few days ago was the discussion Scott and I had about Snow White, the new Snow White movie that Disney has tried now to memory hole because, of course, it didn't do well enough. Disney's being stupid about that film for a lot of reasons. That's a different discussion. But one thing Scott mentioned in our discussion of that film is that he appreciated how Mark Webb kind of let a couple of the musical sequences breathe a little bit, that it didn't feel chopped and edited to high heaven. And one thing I was noticing here that I'm sure each of you noticed, this sequence is there are only 4 shots in this sequence, including a 105-second long take that just slowly zooms in on Nora, and it's all the more effective for how simply Don Chaffee presents this sequence. I mean it sincerely. This is a really great song. This is one of those standout pieces of music in Disney that, I mean, maybe it's because I'm a young man, but I'm not that young anymore, I don't think. But this song gets me emotional when I hear it. This is a song that works arguably more for me now than it did for me when I was a kid. I really, really love this song. I have nothing bad to say about this. If the whole movie was like this, I would be shouting from the rooftops about how great it is. I love this song. I can't imagine either of you has anything to say against it, but am I wrong? Is there anything you'd want to add to this wonderful midway point song?
No, I mean it's a lovely song. It's a beautiful song. I mean I found it really moving, when I was a little kid. I find it really moving now. One thing I want to mention, I mean this doesn't have to do with the song. It has more to do with the movie, but it is one of the things, and watching it again you notice it more. You don't notice it when you're a kid, but the effects and kind of the location in Pete's Dragon, it's a really fascinating hybrid because there's so many scenes that are clearly shot on location, right? And there's this, I mean, I think they find, they concoct a great atmosphere for the film, but then, a lot of scenes are also clearly sound stages, and, especially a lot of the scenes involving Elliot and Pete. It's like even Pete is like Elliot, we get it. He's animated, so he doesn't quite fit into the setting. But then you see Pete, and he's also, he also looks like he's been pasted into that. So it's funny how, to me, I mean, I was completely transported as a kid by this movie to Passamaquoddy, and which is also such a kind of, I mean, that in itself is a cinematic trope in a way, this the sort of small, wet New England or Pacific Northwest town kind of thing. I mean, I love that sort of atmosphere. But it is interesting to watch how it's been integrated, how different ways of shooting it have been integrated throughout. And I love, I mean, the song itself is great, but the way they shot it, with the lighthouse and the sea out there really, really, adds so much to it.
So here's where I'm not going to defer that it's not a great song in this moment in this film. It is, but listening to the cover versions suggests how good this is because of the way Helen Reddy performs it.
Yes.
She acts she performs the song with the context of someone who her brain is telling her there's no hope, but her heart is telling her there is, and it is underplayed in a way that is absolutely gorgeous because you can get that tension of, I'm here if you come back, but I really probably know that you're not. That is a tough, and I'm just sitting here going, somebody directed that performance of the song extremely well. Now, she's obviously an extremely talented interpreter of songs.
Mhm.
That's what she does. She was not a songwriter. She was a singer of other people's songs. And so I think she grasped that. But when we get to some of the covers, you realize it is possible to do this song really badly.
Uh-huh.
So the song itself is not inherently great. The performance of it is perfect.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I should note here, this song was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song, but unlike with The Poseidon Adventure and The Towering Inferno, Kasia and Hershorn were nominees. They did not win. Now, do either of you off the top of your head know what won for Best Original Song that year? Okay, what was it? Tell me.
It was You Light Up My Life.
It sure was. That was the winner. The other nominees included, from The Spy Who Loved Me, earlier mentioned, Nobody Does It Better, got a nomination. Also from The Rescuers, Someone's Waiting for You, as well as a song the Sherman Brothers wrote called He/She Danced With Me from The Slipper and the Rose. But yes, You Light Up My Life was the winner. I'm going to say it. I kind of feel like Candle on the Water or Nobody Does It Better probably should have gotten the award instead, but such is life.
Those of us who were alive at the time remember how huge You Light Up My Life was. That was a number one song for like 10 weeks, like a American top 40 I mean, that song was everywhere.
Fair enough. I know of it. I've heard it before, but I mean, time being what it is, it's like decades later, I think, yeah, it should have been the Bond song or Candle on the Water.
Yeah.
But such is life. Anyway, so after this song, one of the things now that Pete is living with Nora and Lampy, although not officially, he is going to school. And when Nora brings him to school, there is a bit of a fracas, partially inspired by Elliot. And this leads to the song, There's Room for Everyone. The idea of the song is that Nora is trying to convince both the very officious teacher of the town as well as the other people in the town that there's plenty of room for Pete in Passamaquoddy. This is one where I think it speaks as much to what Scott just said in that Helen Reddy is a very good interpreter of other people's songs. I think her performance is fine. I actually like the music of the bridge of the song quite a lot. I think the lyrics, though, are, I'm going to mention the word again, very cloying in a way that I think is a little more noticeable here. I will say I had also forgotten that there is a brief dance break with the kids climbing all over the town, which, I mean, talking about how things used to be different. Parents used to, throw safety and caution to the wind, letting their children climb all over all sorts of things in the town. I will say, like, this one it's not quite like last time Scott and I were using Les Poissons as kind of a brief, not automatically unmemorable song, but a song that maybe doesn't have the same staying power of other songs in a given film. I feel like this one it's there, it's fine, it's quick, it feels quick to me, it almost feels like it's just there to kind of, we don't want to put dialogue in this scene. Let's have a song instead. So it's okay. It did not stand out to me positively or negatively. What about for the two of you?
It doesn't, I mean, it's not a particularly special song either. I do like the kids dancing. I mean, I do like, it's kind of the turn that's happening because earlier, everybody was kind of freaked out by Pete and now he's slowly becoming accepted. The thing I'll always remember from this is, and I think it's right after this song when they go to the school headmistress or teacher or whatever, and they're trying to get Pete into the school and she's trying to trying to find any which way she can to keep him out of the school. And at one point, she finally gives in, and she gives in with the words, I would if I could, but I can't. Which I always found, like, when I saw that, I was like, wow, what an interesting thing to say. Remember, you got to remember, I've only been in the U.S. like 2 or 3 years at this point. And I know I'm fluent in English at this point, but I'm still learning things. And I always thought that was actually like a famous, like a common expression, and I would say that all the time as a kid. What does that mean? I'm like, they said it in Pete's Dragon. And they're like, what?
Clean up your room. I would if I could, but I can't.
Yeah, it applies in so many circumstances. And now, obviously, I'm aware that it wasn't like a common saying. So now I sometimes say it, it's not funny. I don't know.
I mean, this is a filler. That's fine. It's actually, I agree with Josh that it's more of a filler. But again, I like the moments where it offers a bit of that performance energy, that stage type energy. And this was like, I'm glad that we get another little fun little dance break. And yeah, it's very, come on, everybody's wonderful. Can't we all just get along? And it's very, it's very sappy in that way, but maybe I'm more receptive to those kinds of ideas at this moment. And it's got a nice little waltz to it, and it's that's fine. I'm fine with it being there.
Fair enough. And again, I can definitely line up with that. Find that it's there. It then leads to there's a fracas at the schoolhouse that ends with Elliot, still invisible, kind of bursting through the wall, leaving a dragon-shaped hole in the side of it. And that finally convinces Dr. Terminus that Hoagie was not just drunkenly hallucinating a dragon, but that there really must be a dragon in town. And so he and Hoagie realize how many different potential medicinal properties dragons can have, leading them to sing Every Little Piece, which, as I have already told you guys, I mean, here's what I'll say about this song versus Passamaquoddy. The one thing that I also dislike about Passamaquoddy that does not apply here, Passamaquoddy serves as their introduction, which kind of puts the story to a halt. Like, there's the plot momentum, and then suddenly, let's meet these other two random people you've never heard of before. Whereas here, we obviously know who Dr. Terminus and Hoagie are at this point. And I would also say, by this point, when I was a kid, I think there was probably some part of me that was like, I guess that foster family just isn't a thing anymore for Pete, because here are the villains of the piece. We haven't heard from the Gogans for, at this point, about an hour or so of the film, maybe a little bit longer of the runtime. And these guys are trying to hurt Elliot. They're the bad guys, so they get this big song. And I think my biggest problem with it is it's like there's the verse, there's the chorus, and that takes up a good 2.5 minutes. And then it's like, and now we repeat. And I don't know why I don't know why I feel weird having to say this now 2 episodes in a row. I love Broadway musicals. I love show tunes. I love musicals. The one thing that I somehow get annoyed with in this specific scene, they have a stage. They are literally performing on a stage by the end of this. They're dancing, and I was like, there's no one you're dancing to. And I know neither of you has to tell me how many wonderful MGM musicals do the exact same thing. I know. I know, Scott. I know. I think maybe then part of it is, you and I both, my favorite film is Singing in the Rain, which has lots of performances to no one. So I can absolutely suspend my disbelief. I think at the very least, maybe what I would say is, this is like bargain basement musical. This is like, I want Oreos and I get Hydrox instead. Or I want like the brand instead I get Kirkland Signature. Something like that.
Hydrox are better than Oreos, but never mind that.
Do not knock Kirkland Signature, man.
Okay, I've apparently offended on both sides of that comparison. I'm glad to know. So here, you both know that I don't like the song and that there's probably no way to convince me, but please, I cede the floor to the two of you. Tell our listeners why I'm crazy and why this song is wonderful.
Every little piece, every little piece. I can take the scissor and clip them up, whip them up, every little part. I love the song. But no, fair enough. I don't, the sequence itself, take it or leave it, they're not, going all out, with the dancing and stuff like that. But I think, you gotta imagine like you're a little kid watching this, and this is the guy, like they are talking about cutting up Elliot into little pieces and like taking out his innards and stuff like that. Like it's a really dark song. And that gives it a certain kind of energy because it's like such a buoyant, bouncy little song. And they're talking about this horrific thing that they're going to do. Which when you're a kid, that's like really, that's not like traumatizing or anything, but that's like, this is the thing we talk about, right? With like fairy tales and the original fairy tales and how dark they are, and also like how dark a lot of the original Disney movies are in ways that maybe don't always translate, where they sometimes play it a little too safe now. But but here's like a throwaway moment. It's not a throwaway moment. Obviously, it's a musical sequence, but here's like this kind of, this like, it's like a recitativo moment almost. And they're talking about, cutting up the dragon whom we've seen and whom we love and who's adorable and cute. And they're gonna take his liver out, and they're gonna like drain his blood and sell it, like it's so terrifying when you drill down into it. So to that end, I really enjoy the song. I also think it's like super catchy,
I agree, and I've already made it clear, and I like what Jim Dale is doing, and I like this version much more than I like what happens in Passamaquoddy. And I'm going to make a comparison that I will preface by saying I'm not suggesting this song is as good as, but I started thinking about Poor Unfortunate Souls. And the reason I started thinking about it is I imagined this as an animated sequence. And this is sort of, he was performing as though he were an animated character. And I think about the way that Ursula is animated, and obviously we're not quite, Pat Carroll was performing in the studio, and they were able to use that as sort of a model. But I imagine that this is exactly how someone would perform this role if they were in a studio singing this song to be animated. And I like that. I like that is the way that this was approached in sort of this hybrid of live action and animation. He was performing as though he were an animated villain, and he did it very well. And I also do like the song, although to me, the weirdest part was that, they were suggesting that one of the important things that they could get out of Elliot was advancing puberty, I believe was one of the things. That if you eat his dust of his horns, you could get early puberty. It's like, okay, well, I'm glad that the kids know that now.
I will at least agree. I do think this is a catchier song than Passamaquoddy. I will also add on to your Ursula comparison. We should not forget that one of the famous live action references for that character was Divine from John Waters films, talking about kind of a big, broad, brassy type of character or performer. I do want, for the next song, though, I want to go back to one of the things that Bilge was talking about how this film does, in some sequences or some aspects, film on location. Because after every little piece, which again is performed to nobody essentially but the two evil men, Dr. Terminus and Hoagie, we then get to Lampy and Nora telling Pete that they would like him to live with them full time, like not just for a little while. They want him to essentially be their adopted child. And Pete, of course, very happily accepts this. They then proceed to whitewash the lighthouse and perform the song Brazzle, Dazzle Day, which I know for a fact that when I talked about this in episode 20 of the old show, I verbally was rolling my eyes at the silliness of the title Brazzle, Dazzle Day. I think in my old age, I have softened to this song somewhat. I still think it's a little sappy, but the thing I was particularly fascinated by this time, as I'm sure each of you noticed, there's a good chunk of this that is filmed as this very wide shot as the three actors are pulling themselves up to the top of the lighthouse. And although I'm sure there might have been some production help either above the frame or below the frame, I mean, it's clearly the three of them on this pulley system pulling themselves up the lighthouse. And I was like, it's so odd and impressive that they let this moment play out during the song. There is definitely some goofy dancing once they reach the top of the lighthouse, including Mickey Rooney waggling his butt at the camera. Thank you for that, Disney. I was hoping for that in a film like this. But I mean, I think this is the kind of like show-stopping song sequence that I vibe with a little bit more than something like I Saw a Dragon earlier in the film. I mean, it's also, even with I Saw a Dragon, it's nice to see Mickey Rooney performing, even if he's a ham, because he just has that innate quality that he obviously honed across countless MGM films when he was playing Andy Hardy and in films like Babes in Arms. Again, I don't love the song, but I do like it. I think the live on location aspect of it is particularly notable, at least this time around. What do the two of you think?
Here's what's interesting to me about this song is that it feels like, you say, a showstopper number. It feels like it's missing a little bit of that again, we're pulling them up the side of the lighthouse. This is a song I would have liked to have had with more dancers, more production, a little bit more something that would have given it that kick. Otherwise, it feels. I mean, it's funny that obviously we're coming off of Snow White last week, and we were talking about it's the cleanup songs, and it's like, well, I can imagine this now. There's this entire Disney alternate history where every one of their movies has a cleaning song, and here's our Mary Poppins-esque cleaning song, and here's our happy working song so we've got all of these things. It's like, oh, it's the cleanup song. Now we're gonna just well, okay, I guess that I didn't have quite as much enthusiasm for it because I wanted there to be a little bit more of if this is going to be a showstopper, stop the show for something besides a pulley.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like a song that actually, if a Pete's Dragon stage musical ever came to fruition, it would be more impressive on the stage almost. I mean, the song, it's fine. It doesn't do much for me as a song itself. But at this point, if you're locked into the story, it's a nice song. It's a nice moment because, he's like kind of, his like being sort of further accepted by this family. But yeah, it's a fine song. It's not one of those songs that stay with me from this movie.
Fair enough. I can't believe we found one where I liked it, I think, more than either of the two of you, but it's good to know that such a song exists here. So after that, I mentioned a few minutes ago that by the time of Every Little Piece, I think when I was a kid, I just kind of assumed, I guess the Gogans aren't going to be in any more of the movie. Of course, as a grown-up, I know that you don't cast Shelley Winters in a film just for a single-scene cameo like this, especially in a Disney movie like this, so that soon after the Brazzle Dazzle Day sequence, the Gogans finally arrive in town. Why it takes them so long to go 3 miles where it takes Pete and Elliot like 5 minutes, who's to say? But they do arrive in town, and they quickly find Pete with Nora and Lampy, and they prove that they have a bill of sale, which is the name of the last original non-reprise song in the film. And aside from being a nice bookend where the first song of this movie is performed by the Gogans, so too is this one, although Nora does have a little bit to do in this song from a lyrical standpoint. I thought it was also a nice bookend in terms of, well, this is also not that great of a song. It does not feel like the movie is ending strong with its original songs here. As I put in my notes, I feel like this song is supposed to be cruddy considering how proudly awful the Gogans are. They're not even trying to attempt like they do in the first song where they're trying to present a respectable air for too long. They're pretty straightforwardly awful here. Again, I think even aside from not really loving this song, it's also not very memorable. It kind of has that same spoken through quality to the lyrics, similar to the first one, that kind of Rex Harrison and My Fair Lady style. What do the two of you think of Bill of Sale?
Would you say the Gogans are Chekhov's hillbillies?
I will now.
Yeah, we saw them early on, so we know.
Yes, of course.
I mean, the song itself is not, particularly memorable as a song, but this whole concept of the bill of sale, the fact that, they bought that they bought Pete. I mean, that's creepy.
Yes.
And that, that really resonates as a kid. I can tell you that. So again, I mean, the Gogans are kind of like, either you vibe with this whole thing or you don't, like these like, rampaging hillbillies who aren't even like in any way meant to be realistic or human or anything. And they're kind of funny, but they're kind of creepy too. I mean, they're more creepy than they're funny. And they're also incompetent. So it's weird, there's this like real, like just chaotic energy to them. And, I enjoy this. Again, I enjoy this part because there's like real darkness at the heart of the comedy. And that tension I always find really, really, interesting and compelling. But as a song, like I wouldn't sit there and listen to it,
Fair.
Oh, yeah, same.
Unlike Every Little Piece.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that, I mean, your point, Josh, is well taken, that it's a weird I mean, as you said, there are reprises, so it's not really technically the last song, but it's not a song to finish strong on. And so it's one of those things that's like, we have a plot point to resolve, we need a song to resolve that plot point, and we are going to do so. And beyond that, there's not much to it. And then we have it's amazing how much of the movie is left when that last original song happens. There's fully 20 minutes, half an hour almost. It's just a lot of movie left.
Yes, I'd say it's about 30 minutes or so. Yeah, it is a long movie. It's about 2 hours and 10 minutes, the whole film, all told. I believe the original version was even longer, and they had to trim it down a little bit. Yes, it was originally 2 hours and 15 minutes. It was trimmed down by a little bit over time. Every little piece of the film was slightly trimmed back. And then, so after the Gogans attempt and fail to get Pete back, the Gogans team up with Dr. Terminus and Hoagie so that they can capture Pete. Dr. Terminus and Hoagie can get Elliot. Everybody will be happy. Of course, that's not really what happens because, as it turns out, Elliot was able to locate Paul, Nora's fiance, who was the survivor of a shipwreck at Cape Hatteras, and amazingly, he survived from that, as well as having amnesia until Elliot woke him up and magically he remembered everything else. He comes back during a torrential rainstorm, all the while Dr. Terminus and Hoagie and the Gogans are trying to capture Pete and Elliot. Of course, things end up happily. Dr. Terminus and Hoagie are left running away in terror. The Gogans are beaten, silly. Paul returns, reunites with Nora, happily ever after. During the happily ever after part, we get two brief reprises. There's one for I Saw a Dragon and one for Brazzle Dazzle Day. I think it's very interesting the choices the film makes in terms of which songs get those reprises. Neither of them is particularly special. The one thing I realized talking about film reunions of a sort, one character we haven't really talked about because he doesn't sing at all in the movie is the mayor of Passamaquoddy, played by Jim Backus, who people, of course, know as the voice of Mr. Magoo. He was on Gilligan's Island. And he also was in a film with Mickey Rooney that, of course, is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, talking about big, broad, very long movies. And I loved that one when I was a kid. I don't know why, but I did. It hasn't aged quite as well. I've watched it on its Criterion Collection version. It's a lot if people haven't seen that one. But anyway, I mean, for either of you, anything to call out with the reprises here? Again, they're pretty brief. And again, I think it's interesting which songs get the repeat, whereas Candle on the Water does not, for example.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, it is funny how, I mean, those are the two songs that are kind of maybe more narrative than the others, so maybe that makes sense. But yeah, it is an odd choice for. I mean, I Saw a Dragon not so much. Like, it makes sense that one would come back, but Brazzle Dazzle Day doesn't quite. Like Brazzle Dazzle Day, we haven't it hasn't been that long since we heard that song,
right.
You know. But yeah, it's funny. It's the length of the movie. It's interesting. Like, in my mind, I thought of this as a very short movie. You know, so when I was going to rewatch it, I kind of put it off until I watch movies late at night, but I put it off until 2 a.m. or something, thinking, it'll be, I'll be done by 3:30. And then I looked at the running time. I was like, what? That movie's 2 hours and 10 minutes long? What the fuck? You know, I can't, am I allowed to curse on the podcast about Disney musicals? Sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, musicals tend to be long, but Disney films tend to be short. So it was it was kind of surprising. Obviously now everything is 2.5 hours long. So who knows? But it is funny how long this movie is. For me, it never drags. There's no part of it where I'm like, it's too long. Get going already. But it is like looking at the runtime. I was like, Jesus, what the hell?
I'll tell you what, it's been fascinating just sitting here in this conversation. I had not really thought about this idea of a stage version until, Bilge, you brought it up. And I've been sitting here looking at this list and it was like, the things they'd have to do. I'm just rubbing my hands together and, how you would, how you would restructure this in order for it to work. In the same way that you think, I mean, I don't know how familiar either of you are with the Julie Taymor stage version of The Lion King versus,
Sure, I've seen it.
Yeah, so, you have these different choices of where do songs go and how do you end Act 1 so you're going out on it, all of these kinds of things. It's like, is Candle on the Water the Act 1 end? It's an interesting, but I think about this as, do you end, you probably do end with a reprise of Brazzle Dazzle Day. You just end with a big version of it. And I think that it's fine to do that. And so I'm now going to be sitting here stewing over, who's got the rights to the, and can I start messing with the book for that,
I know it is surprising to me that it hasn't happened. I'm assuming, I mean, it's Disney. They made a remake. Like I'm assuming there is some like technical legal reason why it hasn't happened, because it does feel like something, especially in the age of Wicked, like you wouldn't have to worry about the effects, I mean, the thing, and we haven't talked about this much because it's not a part of the songs, but Elliot is such an adorable character. And I mean, in many ways, when I was a kid, I mean, yeah, I loved some of the songs and stuff like that, but really what sold me on the movie was Elliot. He's adorable, and he's animated beautifully. I mean, he's not particularly integrated well into the action like that. Today you watch it and you're like, hey, that doesn't look real at all. But it, he is such a kind of adorable, like you want him to be you want your own dragon when you see this movie as a kid. And it's a great little, it's like, children and their imaginary best friends. And so it's kind of built on that idea. And I guess when they originally had the concept, you were never going to see Elliot. And at some point they were like, no, we're Disney. We got to show Elliot.
Yeah.
He's delightful. And it is funny. I mean, I really liked, David Lowery's quote unquote remake, which isn't really a remake at all. But it would have been interesting if they had tried to actually remake Pete's Dragon in a way that was like more like this one, not like this one, but like they actually kind of built on the ideas in this movie as opposed to just kind of doing their own thing. Probably wouldn't have worked, but it would have been interesting to see. And I think this movie seems just ready made for the stage. I don't know.
I mean, I can definitely see it. I have to assume part of the reason why is that while it obviously does have its fans, I don't think that this one, like Mary Poppins was turned into a Broadway show, but not even Bedknobs and Broomsticks got that treatment. And that's another type of film that has lots of songs. It has lots of effects that would have to be captured. And I could see that happening, but it doesn't have maybe the same cultural awareness. And so, as much as I love the David Lowery remake, I understand inherently that one of the reasons why it did not do as well is that younger audiences don't have a lot of memories of Pete's Dragon, if they have any memories of the film at all. By the way, a couple of fun facts I want to mention about Elliot, since, again, not really related to the songs, but you brought him up, Bilge. Elliot was named such because the writer of the film was good friends with Mr. Elliot Gould, which I think is a hilarious little detail. It reminds me very much of that very famous tweet of like, hey, we made that picture of Elliot and Grover real sexy, like you like, boss. The other thing we should also note, the animation director of this film was none other than a very young Don Bluth. This is a pre-Secret of Nim, an American Tail Don Bluth, but he was the animation director of the film. And yeah, I mean, listen, Scott, if you want to make a Pete's Dragon musical, I am sure that our good friend Bob Iger would be more than to hear what you've got to say.
I'll prepare my pitch right away.
Very good. Now, let's briefly shift into our cover corner before we wrap up, because it's funny. I think off the air, Scott, after our Snow White discussion, I said, can't wait for all those covers of Pete's Dragon songs. And you said to me, essentially, there's not many of them. And you were correct. There are a few. There is speaking of the David Lowery remake, there is a version of Candle on the Water performed during the credits by the band Ockerville River. There is another cover by a co-star of That's So Raven, Annalise Vanderpool, from a Disney Channel album of covers from the early 2000s. And the other one that I found, I mentioned earlier, there is an episode of Pushing Daisies that is a very clear, very lengthy ode to Pete's Dragon. The character who gets killed is Merle McQuaddy, Obviously, you have Jim Dale as the narrator, although amazingly, I did not catch a single reference to the film in his dialogue, which is kind of impressive. And Kristen Chenoweth briefly covers Candle on the Water in that episode in a lighthouse. So the people who made that show, Brian Fuller and company, clearly enjoyed Pete's Dragon. So that might be something, Bilge, for you to check out. You might enjoy the references there. But yeah, Scott, Bilge, I don't know if you heard any of those covers I referenced. I know I listened to the two that I mentioned, Annalise Vanderpool, Ockerville River, and Scott, you alluded earlier that those covers kind of show you how Helen Reddy makes that song so special.
Yes.
Which I agree with.
I think the Ockerville River version is terrible. It's borderline unlistenable. It's just there's something about the, first of all, it's in my head it should not be a male singer, but that's just maybe that's a terribly I'm gender boxing in somebody in that to think that they couldn't possibly have that kind of longing in their heart. But I just think that the performance is all wrong, and the Annalise Vanderpool version, which is on one of these, collections that was put out in the 90s, these Disney Mania, that was, they used all their Disney Channel stars to do various cover versions. And if you're of an age, like, I don't know, again, if Bilge, you were sort of as familiar with as I was with the era of Chicago when David Foster was producing Chicago's music, and that is what I thought of, and again, not the right choice. It is just making it big, and this is not a diva song. It should never be a diva song. It is a melancholy song, and the idea of some kid sitting out there going, "I'm gonna belt this thing," it's like, oh no, hon, no.
Yeah, it's. Go ahead, Bilge.
No, and I mean, I didn't listen to any of the covers for this podcast. Obviously, I would have heard the one in the Pete's Dragon remake. At some point I did hear one of the covers. I'm assuming it was that what's her name? That Annalise Pohl?
Annalise Vanderpool. Yeah.
Annalise Vanderpool. Probably heard that version at some point. But like there are other opportunities here. Like, where's my heavy metal version of Every Little Piece? Where's Metallica's cover of Every Little Piece? Where's Radiohead's I Saw a Dragon? I feel like that should have been somewhere in Kid A or Amnesiac, But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, there are opportunities there. That it doesn't all have to be Candle on the Water. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It is a melancholy, kind of. It's a solo song. It should not be big. It should not be it should be what it is. You can cover it. You can cover it in versions. I mean, obviously Helen Reddy is wonderful and it's perfect for her. But you can cover it. You just have to be true to the essence of the song. You don't have to reinvent it. It doesn't need reinventing. The song works,
Agreed. And yeah, I mean, I think with that though, I think we have covered the songs of Pete's Dragon. So again, I think it is definitely worth people rewatching the film. Obviously, we all have different reactions to the film and to its songs. I would say that if you are more aligned to Scott or Bilge, you might want to watch the whole film as opposed to just listening to the songs so you can get that full experience. But yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. So, Scott, why don't you take us out?
Well, with that, it's time to turn down the volume on Mousterpiece Melodies. What's on the playlist for our next episode? 1992's Aladdin. And while you wait, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. Bilge, thank you so much for joining us. I know that we mentioned your primary credits at the top of the show, but as a reminder, can you let our listeners know where they can find you on the internet?
Yes, on the interwebs, you can find me at vulture.com, which is my main outlet. And on the social medias, you can find me at Blue Sky and Twitter under my name. And yeah, that's where I am. And as much as I want to leave social media, I seem to be doing more and more of it than ever before. So
it's a wonderful time to be on social media. Don't fact check me. Anyway, we'd love for all of you to listen along with us. Tell us what you think. Do you love the songs of Pete's Dragon? Are you like me and you love one of those songs, are okay with a couple of them and can't stand the rest, or somewhere in between? If you have any comments, questions, or opinions you'd like to share, you can reach me at mousterpiececinema@gmail.com and follow me on Blue Sky @Mousterpiece. And Scott, remind our listeners where they can find you online.
I am at Blue Sky at Scott Renshaw. I'm also on Letterboxd at Scott Renshaw, and you can find my film criticism at my primary outlet, Salt Lake City Weekly. That is cityweekly.net. And I'm Scott Renshaw.
And I'm Josh Spiegel, and we'll see you all next time on Mousterpiece Melodies.